Emma Miller, 35, was standing by the window, leaning on the contemporary fence, looking at the fall color in her garden as twilight began to creep over the affluent Lake Forest suburb of Chicago. Emma, who was 5 months pregnant, stroked her slightly protruding tummy. She briefly forgot the complex connections with her sister and dad as she experienced a calm joy with each revelation of the small life within. Emma felt memories flood her mind as she closed her eyes. She remembered the incident from 2 years ago at her father's birthday celebration. Her father, Howard's 60th birthday, was marked with a lavish party at the Baker family's opulent home. Champagne flowed freely, and the titans of Chicago's real estate sector were invited. "Oh, Emma," said Michelle, her mother, who was wearing a gaudy Chanel outfit. "Did you buy that dress on sale at a department store?" It was obvious that it was sarcastic. Although Emma's plain black clothing was purchased from a department shop, it also embodied her moral principles. Calmly, "Yes, I like it," she said. Michelle said, "Well, with your husband's salary, that's understandable," raising her voice to be heard by the other guests. "A small real estate firm's president is nothing compared to the people here." Her sister Charlotte, who was wearing a Hermes dress and a necklace that was obviously real diamonds, interrupted at that point. Charlotte said, "Emma, it's rare to see you here," in a mocking tone. "Usually you avoid family gatherings, preferring a simple life." Emma only gave a quiet smile. At their father's business, Charlotte was the director of sales, but her abilities were in doubt. Her parents, however, gave her a large salary and permitted her to live a luxurious lifestyle. Emma heard her father talking to a customer during the celebration. Howard claimed, "Charlotte is the key to the future of Baker real estate. She's showing excellent skills as my successor." Emma couldn't resist grinning. She was aware that Charlotte's abilities were limited to pretentious showmanship and meaningless small talk. "Father," said Emma, and Howard's face tensed for a second. He forced a polite grin. "Ah, Emma," he said, "you came today." Her words were, "Happy birthday." "Ah," said Howard abruptly. "Is John working today?" "Yes, he's got an important case." In a mocking tone, Howard remarked, "Well, being the president of a small company must be tough." "Well, the scale is just different from big corporations like ours." "Emma," Michelle began abruptly as the evening came to a conclusion, "I have to tell you something." Beneath the heavy makeup, her face looked serious. "The decision has been made for Charlotte to inherit Howard's business. Since you broke with our family's custom and went it alone, you have no voice." Although Emma sensed a sinister undertone to those comments, she chose not to follow it. Then, a few weeks ago, Emma went to see her parents to tell them she was pregnant for the first time since that celebration 2 years earlier. However, the day's events left severe wounds. "Pregnant?" Michelle seems taken aback. "Really? It will be difficult to raise children given your living conditions." "We're preparing well," Emma insisted. "Preparing?" Charlotte added her voice. "You must think of preparedness as just another straightforward way of living. That youngster is a sad case." Emma bore it in silence, but the ultimate blow came from her father's parting words. "Emma," cautioned Howard, "don't give your kid the Baker last name. I won't allow you to ruin the customs of our family." Emma had avoided her family as much as possible since that day. She didn't respond to emails or phone calls. She made the decision to defend herself and her unborn child, not only to show disobedience. Even yet, she continued to feel the weight of her family's shadow, particularly when she heard gossip about the business that her parents and Charlotte owned. She experienced an unfathomable sense of worry. The business seemed to be doing well on the surface. Strange whispers about unusual transactions and opaque cash flows, meanwhile, continued to circulate inside the business. Emma had a feeling that a big fact was being withheld, but she was unaware that these whispers were only the beginning. Michelle said, "We were embarrassed at the wedding too," echoing. "Such a modest wedding, it completely ruined the Baker family's reputation." Emma's eyes opened, the fall breeze strewn with memories of the past. Are you feeling okay? Behind her, Jason's soft voice could be heard. As the CEO of a real estate development business, he had just concluded another hectic day. Even though he was under continual strain, he always made sure to check on Emma's health first when he got home. Emma smiled and said, "Yes, perfect," as she turned around in her plain dress devoid of any opulent trimmings. Her extravagant family's way of life was a sharp contrast to her own. The silence was broken when her smartphone called at home. As Mom appeared on the screen, Emma's face tensed. She inhaled deeply and picked up the phone after 3 rings. "Hello," Michelle said. "Emma, I need to talk to you about your baby shower," in her typically haughty tone. The background noise implied that she was getting a massage in a posh spa. "I have planned a party at Lisandro for next Saturday at 7:30. Be present." One of Chicago's most prominent French eateries, Lisandro is renowned for its exquisite service and hundreds-dollar delicacies. Unconsciously, Emma scowled. This was always the case with her family, preoccupied with outward appearances and opinions. "Mom, it doesn't have to be somewhere that fancy." "Nonsense," Michelle said, her tone hardening. "My first grandchild is this one. It need to be honored in a suitable setting. Or are you going to continue being humble as usual?" Her remarks conveyed years of disapproval of Emma's choices, contempt for her marriage to Jason, and condemnation of her way of life. As soon as I hung up, Charlotte sent me a message on Messenger. "Please come this time, Emma. You always avoid us, which is unfortunate. Your parents are quite concerned about you." Emma grinned bitterly as she gazed at the screen of her smartphone. Charlotte's hypocritical remarks, which denigrated Emma's choice to be independent, were always concealed by malice. Jason touched her shoulder in silence. "If you don't want to, you are under no obligation to go. You don't have to hear them." Emma answered, "Yes, I'll go," with firmness. "I'm done," said Emma. "Are you fleeing? Perhaps it's time to relax." Emma was in the study that evening, looking through an old book that had pictures from 10 years prior, when she made the decision to quit a large company and become self-sufficient. Charlotte decided to remain with the family despite her parents making fun of her choice. "There is nothing you can do," her mother had said. "You'll just be a disgrace to our family." And she could still hear the words. The young Emma in the pictures appeared nervous, but she persisted. She met Jason Miller as a result of that choice, which brought her the most joy of her life. Even though he was just the president of a tiny real estate firm at the time, Emma was immediately drawn to his honesty, his unwavering work ethic, and, above all, his belief that individuals should be judged on their character rather than their rank or looks. The marriage was disapproved of both Charlotte and her parents. "What's the point of marrying someone from such a small real estate company?" Charlotte laughed. Emma, however, was content. Jason was now the CEO of a large real estate development company after growing his business consistently. The pair nevertheless kept up their humble lifestyle. They cherished true enjoyment, unaffected by vanity or pretension. "Emma," Jason said, peeking via the study door, "will you please come here? I need to talk about something." The tone of his speech was one of resolve. Unaware that what was about to happen would drastically change her life, Emma closed the old album and got to her feet softly. An ancient structure that exuded grandeur, Londor loomed magnificently in a nook of Chicago's Gold Coast. In the darkness of the night, its Art Deco facade, which was evocative of the golden period of the 1920s, glistened fancifully. Emma sighed deeply as she got out of the vehicle. She looked stunning in a blue maternity dress and fit well in with the restaurant's decor. The time on the clock was 7:25. "Take care," urged the cabbie. "It seems like a place you might not prefer." At his remarks, Emma gave a little smile. She did not share her ideals with such an opulent restaurant, but maybe it was time to make amends with her family tonight. Gentle light from the chandeliers created lovely shadows on the marble floor as she opened the hefty brass door. The floor manager, Gabriel, came over grinning elegantly. Are you part of the Baker family's party? Yes, that's us, said Emma. I'm sorry, but your party has already finished their meal. Emma's heart skipped a beat. Already. However, the appointment was set for 7:30. Gabriel's face became hazy. No, your reservation was for 6. Everything became evident at that same moment. It was a setup. In order to keep her cool, Emma inhaled deeply. I'll show you to your table. She entered the main dining area and noticed the wine bottles and empty plates haphazardly placed on the table. Michelle, her mother, had a flimsy grin while wearing a Channel tweed jacket. Her sister Charlotte grinned with her smartphone in hand, while her father Howard sat uneasily in his chair. Michelle said, "Oh, Emma, you finally arrived," with a hint of surprise in her voice. "Our meal is already complete. We didn't anticipate your tardiness." "Mom," Emma said coldly, "the reservation was supposed to be at 7:30. "Impossible?" Charlotte cried out. "It was 6 o'clock. I ensured it." Taking out her phone, Emma read a message from Michelle. It was rather explicit in the text. "Please come at 7:30. Michelle changed the subject and said, "By the way, about the bill. We reserved this to celebrate your baby shower, but you were late, so we had to eat. So, you expect me to pay." Emma interrupted her. "Exactly," stated Charlotte. "Since you were late." Emma took a quick look at the table's bill, which included 2 bottles of pricey wine, 4-course meals, and extra desserts. The sum was more than $2,000. At that moment, soft footsteps came from the restaurant doorway. The words, "Sorry to keep you waiting," were heard from Jason. He walked dignifiedly up to the table in his blue suit. Michelle's voice softened abruptly. "Oh, Jason," she said. "Glad you could join us." But Chef Lou Martin, the proprietor of the restaurant, came after Jason. Michelle's face froze as he emerged. Lou said, "Mrs. Baker," in a serious tone, "thank you for visiting the flagship restaurant of Miller Hospitality Group today." Miller Hospitality Group. Charlotte's tone faltered. "Yes," Jason said coolly. "I own the business. Limas on Door is one of the 5 elite eateries in Chicago that I oversee." When the 3 people at the table discovered that the head of the modest real estate company they had despised was actually the owner of a chain of upscale restaurants, their faces went white. Jason went on, "All records of today's reservation and surveillance footage are kept as evidence of intentional time tampering and fraudulent billing." Michelle's hands were shaking as she reached for her purse. Charlotte nearly dropped her phone when Howard's face became white. Howard began to explain, "This is just a misunderstanding," in a frantic attempt. It's not a misunderstanding, Father." Jason's eyes were keen, but his speech was quiet. "This scam is deliberate, and this is only the beginning. We are also looking at your previous behavior in great detail." Emma saw her family's faces fall apart as she stood by her spouse. Years of dishonesty and conceit were finally ending. The skyline of Chicago was glaring ruthlessly beyond the window. The private dining room had a somber tone. The faces around the table were brutally lit by the light from the chandelier. Jason placed a briefcase made of black leather on the table in silence. "There's something I want you to see." The sound of the lock snapping was abnormally loud. Michelle's heavily makeup-covered face twisted. Charlotte was transfixed, still holding her phone, while Howard used his old hands to wipe perspiration from his brow. Jason produced a paper and said, "This is Baker Real Estate's transaction records for the past 5 years." Jason went on, "Very interesting content, Father." What are you talking about?" Howard trembled when he spoke. "False transactions, fake invoicing." Jason displayed an additional document. Multiple illegal loans. Emma let out a gasp. She was unaware of the extent of the corruption in her father's business. "It's been almost insolvent since the 2008 real estate crisis. But you kept up appearances and had an extravagant lifestyle. All of the money was obtained illegally." "Be quiet," Michelle yelled abruptly. "What are you aware of?" "We have a social position to uphold and defend. Therefore, we had to. Are you saying that fraud was necessary? Emma interrupted. Is that why you've looked down on me all these years? You. Charlotte got to her feet. A humble lifestyle? Our family is ashamed of you. Nothing is clear to you. Emma's tone didn't waver. Jason also. Jason produced an additional document. Charlotte Baker, here are the findings of an investigation into your divorce and current financial situation. Charlotte's expression became white. It's been 6 months since your divorce. Your father's company's sales director title was a fiction. Emma persisted unrelentingly. There are no real sales. You just steal from your parents and collect a wage. Stop. Charlotte started crying. I was in a bad situation. I had nothing after the divorce, but I didn't want anybody to know, least of all you, who seemed to lead such a wonderful life. Perfect. Emma laughed. I'd just been living honestly. Enough is enough. Michelle spoke out once again. Emma, we have been defending our family's pride. Pride would be incomprehensible to you. Jason shot back icily. Look at this. Michelle's personal bank account activities were the new document that was shown. Mrs. Baker, you have been using funds embezzled from your husband's company to attend several high-end spas and beauty clinics, and you've been adding on to all these expenses. Be quiet. Michelle put her hands over her ears. A newcomer like you has no right to criticize our way of life. A newbie. At least I didn't use any illegal methods to build my company. Additionally, the reason you. Emma said, you looked down on me, and got to her feet. It was only jealousy, because I was the only one who succeeded. Because unlike you, I didn't become enmeshed in vanity and pretense. Emma Howard's voice trembled as she spoke. We were thinking of your best interest. Lies, Emma's repeated voice said. Your pride has been your life's work. You never showed me or this child any true concern. She stroked her stomach tenderly. She was adamant that her child not be exposed to their world of lies. What do you intend to do now? Jason asked in a low voice. We can submit all this evidence to the authorities. Howard's face became white. No, not that. Charlotte broke down in tears. Please don't. We are unable to descend anymore. Fall, Emma stated icily. For a long time, you have been falling. You just choose not to notice it. The paperwork on the table were ruthlessly lit by the chandelier light. The weight of years of dishonesty and deceit was evident in the mountain of evidence. The words, you have 24 hours, said Jason. Make a decision on this matter. We will file a lawsuit if we don't receive a response before then. Michelle's daughter was contacted. Emma, surely you wouldn't turn against your own family. As of today, we are no longer related. It's over. Goodbye. The 3 Baker family members stared blankly when Emma and Jason exited the room. The private room of the fancy restaurant was empty save for the remains of a broken family. The Chicago skyline was still shining brilliantly outside, but they could no longer feel its warmth. A beam of sunlight filled the quiet courtroom. Jason was seated next to Emma, who was 6 months pregnant, in the spectator area. The prosecutor's voice resonated throughout the anxious courtroom. Now, Howard Baker, Michelle Baker, and Charlotte Baker will go on trial for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. The Baker family had not contacted them within the 24-hour grace period. Rather, they attempted to erase the evidence, but this just made matters worse for them. Regarding systemic fraudulent transactions at Baker Real Estate, the prosecution said, the defendants conducted fraudulent transactions exceeding $5 million since 2008. Emma glanced behind the 3 people seated at the dock. They had lost their glitzy look. Charlotte grabbed a handkerchief with shaking hands. Her mother's face was downturned and makeup-free, and her father seemed tired. One piece of evidence after another was produced, including documentation of illicit financing, proof of financial statement manipulation, and the restaurant's planned deception. In addition, defendant Michelle Baker embezzled more than $1 million for the business. They whispered in the courtroom. Michelle put her hands over her face. Defendant Charlotte Baker reported fictitious sales figures, received undue salaries, and fraudulently obtained benefits and economic gains through false declarations during her divorce. Charlotte's shoulders trembled a bit. The counterarguments from the defense seemed vacuous. The defendants made unavoidable choices to maintain their social status. Objection, said the prosecutor. Maintaining social status does not justify committing crimes. The judge pronounced, objection sustained, with firmness. From the event at the restaurant to the findings of a protracted inquiry, Jason's testimony as a witness was pivotal. He detailed the whole scope of the scam in great detail. Although Baker Real Estate gave the impression of being a prosperous business, it was actually totally bankrupt. To hide this truth, the defendants committed a number of illegal acts. Emma vowed in her heart that this was not about retaliation as she heard Jason's story. Justice was at issue. The necessary steps to stop years of deceit and falsehoods. The following verdicts were handed out during the afternoon court session. Howard Baker, the defendant, faces 5 years in jail. Michelle Baker, the defendant, faces 3 years in jail. Charlotte Baker, the defendant, was sentenced to 2 years in jail with 4 years suspended. They were also mandated to pay hefty fines and refund the illicit riches. All assets were frozen, the mansion was seized, and Baker Real Estate was dissolved. Michelle was upset at the judgment. Are you truly going to put your own mother in jail, Emma? Remember, you mistreated your own daughter emotionally. Are you content to destroy our lives? Charlotte yelled. Jason calmly said, it was your own actions that ruined your lives. As Emma walked out of the courtroom, she didn't turn around. The stairs of the courthouse were drenched in spring sunlight. Are you okay? Jason asked softly. Yes. Our child may now grow up in a world free from dishonesty and deception. The streets of Chicago were busy as usual, but Emma was experiencing a major shift. This was a fresh start rather than the finish. 3 years later, Emma was watching her 2-year-old daughter, Ashley, play in the garden from the window in the quiet Lake Forest neighborhood. 3 years before, the landscape with the swirling leaves and the autumn dusk was the same, but now everything was different. Mommy, look. Ashley displayed a sketch. I drew flowers. Emma said, that's lovely, with a smile. Jason emerged from the research. About your mother, Emma. The Illinois State Prison has freed Michelle Baker. A friend said the once elegant form had become a weary old lady. With the majority of her assets stolen and no chance of reintegration into society, her post-release existence appeared dismal. Does it bother you? Jason asked softly. No. Pulling a letter out of a drawer, Emma said, I just feel like it's karma. A week ago, I received a letter from Charlotte. Living a humble existence in a small town, Charlotte was given a suspended sentence. Emma had no intention of answering the letter, which included apologies and a request for reconciliation. Jason said, hey, and gave her a back hug. What are you thinking about? That our decision was the right one. We chose genuine happiness and severed ties based on deception. Even though the Miller Hospitality Group had expanded during the previous 3 years, they continued to lead a modest life. There was no need for pretension or luxury. The depths of true delight were far greater. Any regrets? From behind, Jason inquired. Not one. Our current contentment is the result of our decision to live an honest life. Emma thought about a tale she had heard about a jail guard from a friend, once referred to as the king of Chicago real estate. Howard Baker initially remained haughty while incarcerated. But when confronted with the fact that he was not given preferential treatment, he began to lose his mind and began repeating in his cell every night, I am a big shot. Are you unaware of who I am? The other prisoners started making fun of him. Emma's current happiness was built on a different route, one of honesty and integrity, whereas the family who chose to live in deception and deceit suffered the consequence. Emma felt deeply satisfied and full of optimism for the future.